want you to kind of, you kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier while we were talking. And I think that is an interesting concept that I've never really heard before. So if you could kind of explain, many times people go into narcissism and they just want to learn as much as they can about narcissism. That's what I did. And you're actually kind of flipping it a little bit. So do you want to explain a little bit how you kind of view it?
Well, I did. I mean, I did the same thing.
Yeah.
I was like, once I was on that road of, oh my God, like all this makes sense now.
Yeah.
Then I had to stop. Then I had to say to myself, like, just stop. So then I went through this mourning process of me not being good enough. And I did that for 15 years until I went, and in that 15 years, I saw psychiatrists, went on antidepressants, all different kinds. One made me fat, so then I was depressed because I was fat. One, I couldn't sleep, so then I was like a zombie. Then one gave me really bad nightmares, so then I wouldn't go to sleep because I didn't like the dreams that I was having. Wow. And so I was just in this vicious cycle, and I was like, nothing's working. I'd go to therapists or psychiatrists, and I'd have my 45-minute time, and they'd want me to relive all this crap. And then say, see you later, I'll see you in 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, I had no support.
Wow.
I would walk out feeling worse than what I did before I walked in. Yeah. And I felt no connection with my therapist or psychiatrist. It was very clinical. They hadn't been through what I'd been through. Everything for them was textbook. And so I was just going like crazy, and I was just like, oh, this is just not working. Like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
And then I started to learn that I had to stop trying to analyze the narcissism and focus on, okay, what do I need to do? Yeah. How can I let this go? How can I move forward? Because I used to, my son's 20, my daughter's 17, and my twins have just turned 13. So I remember even as, like 5 years ago, we'd take them to the beach and they'd all be sitting there and running around and swimming and having fun. And they'd be like, Mom, come on. I'll be like, no, because I had such despair that I was not allowed to feel joy. I just felt like joy and happiness was not for me.
Wow.
I didn't know what it felt like. Being happy and joyful felt really uncomfortable for me. And so I just figured that that's my life and I don't deserve it. And, it sort of makes me sad now when I think, because and that's what started to make me think like, oh my God, I'm treating, my daughters were having anxiety, and my son grew up all for the first 2-3 years of his life just seeing me cry all the time. And I didn't realize until they were starting to get older that I was like, oh, I'm teaching them really bad emotional habits. This is not good.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I need to stop and then focus on myself and how I can, fix the emotions that and stop. What it was I had to stop believing what had been ingrained in me for so many years by so many people in so many different circumstances, because I was told I was a crappy person. I was, told I wasn't pretty. I was told this and I was told that about myself. And yet the whole time I knew I'm a really nice person. I'm a really good person.
Yeah.
I'm actually really quite, but, I just surrendered it all to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just had to take my power back. And I grew up boundaryless. I had no boundaries with my sister as a very young age. She would just stomp all over me. I had no boundaries with my mum. I had to abide by her boundaries, but I was not allowed to have my own. If I did, I had an attitude. I was, being rebellious. All these sorts of things. So I grew, and then into, these alcoholic narcissistic relationships. I just had no boundaries. I did not know how to say no. I stopped voicing my opinion. I stopped believing in the values that I had. And that's where when I started to fix myself emotionally, as soon as I learned what boundaries were and how I could implement them, because even my friends were, I'd meet these friends and I'd do everything for them, and they would take
Yeah.
advantage of me. And then when I needed help, they weren't there. And then I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
I had no boundaries, absolutely none at all.
Wow.
And so once I learned to establish what boundaries were, and boundaries are not just being able to say no, like they're a lot more complex than
Yeah.
we believe, because what are boundaries? What are your boundaries? What are your rules? What are your values? And if you don't know what they are, and most of the time you sort of do know what they are, but you don't set them in concrete. And you have to go, right, I am not going to allow people to do this to me anymore. I am not going to, I'd say yes to do something, and I say, I really just don't want to do it. Oh, but I said yes, and and now I feel shit. But then I didn't want them to not like me because I was always looking for acceptance. And then I soon learned that, having boundaries is actually really empowering.
Yeah.
And that's where, I started to feel good. I was like, what, I like this. Because then I started to get a bit more respect. And then I started to, weed out the people who, if I said no, or no, I'm sorry, I can't do that for you, or blah, 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 or, have a difference of an opinion, and they respected that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I've had that before. Exactly. So it's a skill. It's actually a skill. And it's an essential skill for life that if you don't have it, because you've never been taught it or learnt it, you just don't know. And it's, I've got 3 daughters, and there is no way on earth that I would want them to go through life like I did.
Yeah.
So my 17-year-old daughter, at a very young age, I taught her boundaries. My twins, they're going through primary school. They've got kids that, push them around, and I'm like, nope, say no, don't let them use your pencil, like don't let them take the stuff. And I've watched one of my 13-year-olds actually like grow and learn and go, you know what, like, Mum, it actually feels good to say no, because it'd be like they'd take your ice cream and then you'd sit there and cry because you let them.
Yeah.
Feels good to say, no, you're not having my ice cream, that's mine.
Yes.
And so it was very, very important for me to be able to teach them what boundaries are. And my 17-year-old, like, God love her, like, she doesn't need a boyfriend to validate who she is. She doesn't let people push her around. She doesn't let boys, make her feel bad for anything. She's very, and I'm proud of that, because I needed that. I needed to do that for me, and I needed to do that for them, so that they can, regulate and know how they could be treated, how they should be treated, and their self-respect.
100%. 100%.